Hi, Joel.
Hey, how you doing?
Doing well. I was
That's
just telling
good.
Nicole we should have quorum tonight. I hope that Ty can make it. I did
Okay,
talk to
great.
Cynthia. She should be dialing in, but then Kat Hurley and oh my gosh, why am I drawing a blank? Um,
Andy Curtis?
Andy Curtis. Thank you very much. They're both absent.
Okay.
Got excused.
All right. Hopefully we
Yeah.
can make it. I
Well,
was able to get home in time, so no
clearly,
pulling
I
in
see
from the
that.
road. Yeah,
Yeah.
my daughter was amazingly out the door early this time, which never happens.
Ooh.
Nicole, it's nice to meet you. I don't think we've met.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
nice to
I'm
meet
sorry.
you. No, you're fine. Nice to meet you too.
Uh,
Yeah,
Joel meet Nicole. Nicole meet Joel. There you go.
good to put a face to the name. I've seen some emails from you.
Just a few.
How are things starting off?
They were pretty good.
Good.
Sorry, I would offer idle small talk, but it's hard for me to double do multitask. Um,
Talking and texting. It's difficult.
I know that's why you shouldn't text and drive. Um,
Yes.
I should text. I hope you can dial in.
There's
Oh, he
Ty.
is. Good. All right, and Cynthia should be dialing in as well. Hi, Ty Cashin. Good
Hey,
to see you.
folks. Good to see
Hey,
you
Ty.
too.
We're just waiting for Cynthia here, and then I think we can get it officially going. I was telling Nicole and Joel that both Kat and Andy Curtis, Kat Hurley and Andy Curtis, have connected with me and letting me know that they won't be here, so they're absent. They're going to be absent, but excused. But I think it's important that we have our meeting.
Feels like it's been
Um,
a while. I think we had the
I,
last one cancel, right?
we did, yeah, and that had to do a lot of to do with the current state of affairs of where we're with budget process, administration, short staffing, so on and so forth. Yeah, so our last one was scheduled for November.
Understood.
Yeah. All right. Ty, meet Nicole. I'm not going to say that
Oh,
Nicole is the new David, but Nicole is taking over in David's duty.
Oh, great. Nice to meet you, Nicole.
you too.
Nicole, how do you feel about that? The new David. Is that where you at?
Um, well, I'm more of like the new Chrissy, and Chrissy got moved up. And then you have Katie, who's taken on a lot of David's duties as well. We've kind of just like reallocated everything.
Okay.
All right, guys, give me one more second. I'm going to try to call Cynthia to get this thing moving.
No problem. Ty, I drove was it yesterday or today I drove by the ice rink. It looks like it refroze. So we're maybe back in action.
I know he's
Yeah,
been working on it.
the crew has had to manage the ups and downs of this season. We had such a good start early, but then we've had this stretch of bizarre January weather. So,
All
yeah.
right. Well, let's get into that here in the meat of the agenda here. And I see we've got quorum. Cynthia, it's good to see you. Thank you for dialing in. Nicole, before we get things started officially, before I call this meeting to order, are we recording? And then also, are
Yes.
we broadcasting here?
Yes.
Great. So we are set from that end. So I guess without further ado, I call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of our Village of Sherwood Hills Recreation Committee. Meeting today is Monday, January 12th in the year 2026, and the time is 7:03 p.m. and I call this meeting to order. So, Nicole, if you wouldn't mind, if you could call the roll. And before you do, just note that I did talk to Kat Hurley and Andy Curtis. Both of them will not be attending tonight, so you could mark them as absent but excused.
Okay. Dietmar,
Present?
Cynthia,
Present.
Ty,
Presence.
and Joel.
Present.
Great. Thank you so much, Nicole. And by the way, by way of introduction here is Cynthia. Cynthia, meet Nicole. Nicole meets Cynthia, the other member of our committee here. As I put my foot in my mouth earlier, Nicole is not the new David, but Nicole is taking David's place in recording and being the recording secretary
Yes.
in these meetings here. So hello and welcome aboard, Nicole. So thank you so much. Nicole, at this point in time, I get to ask you, are we in compliance with open meetings law? Has this meeting
Yes.
been properly posted?
Yes.
Great, thank you so much. Then to the body here, you all have a copy of our meeting minutes from September 8th, Monday, September 8th. That's before you guys. And as we had done last time, I'd like to make sure that we follow a more current and more appropriate process in terms of approving minutes. So since we are consistent with Robert's Rules of Order lays out a process by which meeting minutes are approved, which is different than what we've done in the past from a legacy perspective. So the short order version of this, you all had an opportunity to review the minutes. At this point in time, I would ask you if there are any corrections to the minutes. If there are none, or if there are some for consideration, those can be made. If there are none, then subsequently the meeting minutes would be approved. And it's not in the traditional sense of putting a motion on the floor, seconding it, and then voting on the minutes. So with that process outlined in a previous meeting, certainly in September, you also have the Robert's Rules of Order as part of your meeting packet here today, so you can familiarize yourself with that. And I guess with that said, I'll be quiet, but I would ask anyone in attendance here today if there are any corrections to the minutes that anyone wishes to make.
None from me.
I see a whole bunch of head shaking. So if there are no corrections to be made to the meeting minutes, by thus following process and procedure, Nicole, the meeting minutes as presented are approved. You got that?
Got it.
Great, thank you so much. All right, Nicole, now you have the full screen, and I believe I do as well, but I don't see any members of the public here in the online or in the waiting room. Can you confirm that? If there are members of the public, now would be an opportunity for them to speak.
Nope. Nobody else. Just us.
All right, I'm gonna let this go once, going twice, going 3 times. So there are no members of the public that are here or wishing to speak. So that gets us past meeting agenda item 5 and gets us really to the heart of today's conversation, which is the current state and status updates. As we're all familiar, I as chair and we as a body, as a recreational body here, have grown accustomed to the reporting out style of information. So this is an opportunity for members that have been tasked with specific duties to report out to the group and anyone really watching the recording of this meeting as well. So I think early on in the meeting, Ty and Joel, you guys were talking about the Heidenhaus ice rink, but I think now let's get this a little bit more formally into the minutes. And I think Ty, as being the grand poobah of all things related to the ice rink, what do you have to report out?
Sure. Well, let's start with just a quick update about how the season has gone so far. As we were talking about earlier, the ice was established and skatable earlier than any time that I've seen in my 8+ years in Shorewood, which was fantastic. And that was due to just compliant weather. We had really cold weather right after kind of Thanksgiving, and the crew really jumped on it and was able to get ice established, which was fantastic. A liner was used in the hockey area this year, again, like last year, and it was cut a little lower, for I think just for aesthetic reasons, and also it's easier to play on with that liner cut flush. And the free skate area, relatively no problems this year getting that flooded, because there was decent natural snowbank to work with. But that remains unlined this year, and I'll get to that later. We've had some periods where the red flag has gone up, since then, due to some, spells of warm weather. I think I'm hearing good feedback about the new red lights. I think some people have been a little bit confused that they're just holiday lights in red and green, but they're actually functional. Um, you know, it's a lot, I think, easier to maybe drive by and notice that red means everything's closed, green means everything's open. So, but
And Ty, I'm gonna interrupt you real quick, just for two reasons. One is I think that really wants to be made clear to anyone watching this at a future point in time, and certainly I wouldn't shy away from you simply making sure that Nicole captures this information in the meeting minutes, vis-a-vis let the record reflect that the perceived holiday lighting, red around the fascia of the building, actually does mean no skating, no different than the red flag. And then green means that the ice is free. But now I spoke for you. That
correct.
wasn't my intentions, so I
Yeah.
apologize. But just for
No,
that to be
that's
clear.
exactly right. It just reinforces the status of the rink and the color of the flag that's flying. So I think that's been overall been a uh, brief update on how things have gone. I think anecdotally, I've seen a lot of usage of the rink. Every time I pass by, I've seen on cold days, I've seen great usage. So anyway, so far so good. I think the main thing though I wanted to talk about today is just again the uh, kind of ongoing conversation we've had around improvements. And so last week, Dietmar.
And Ty, we'll get to that
Oh,
actually
okay. Is
under
that
line item the F as in Frank 6F.
sure? Okay.
I
Okay.
parsed that apart very, very purposefully, just
Okay.
so that we can have a more in-depth conversation and relate it to it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that's more or less what I wanted to say about the status of the rink. So far so good. I think we've been able to, um, as weather permitting, make the best ice we can, and it's been used. So
Yeah. Thank you, Ty, for that update. And what about Terry and crew? I remember seeing them outside on the cold weekend when the cold snap came in, trying to lay down ice. I'm guessing they've just been troopers to deal with, and certainly put forth a lot of effort to try to make this work.
absolutely.
All right, Cynthia or Joel, any questions for Ty?
I don't. Thanks to Ty and the crew for keeping it plowing ahead, especially considering the weather.
Yeah, good job. Agreed.
Yeah, just basically thanks.
All right. Well, thank you, Ty, for that. Let's move on to line item 6B here, Haydn House summer events. Joel, I'm going to have you probably carry the bulk of the water on this one. I'm going to tell you all, though, you may or may not be familiar with this. I am not running for re-election this year, so my term as chair will be up in March. I guess the election is on April 7th. So there's both motivation to bring this up now so that we can have a transition plan, and certainly for the legacy to continue on. But Outside of that, I think Joel, I'll maybe let you take the floor, and even if the update, hey, I haven't even thought about it yet. Summer seems like a far so far in the future that nothing will happen until another few months from now. But at least want to have this conversation.
Sure, sure. I actually have started thinking about it. I learned a couple years ago a lot of these bands start filling up their schedule in the midwinter for the summer season, and so I've started thinking about it. I have a tentative schedule that I'd like to run past the group here and see if it sounds good, and I can give an update on the various areas. Um, so first, as far as a tentative schedule. I want to, based on our report out from last year, stick to a similar cadence that we had last year. It really seemed to work well as we've done a little trial and error over the last few years. And so, what that would be is two concerts in June and two in July. And so, looking at the schedule or looking at the calendar rather, and those dates and trying to keep them a couple weeks apart, I think June 4th and 18th work well and keep us away from that 4th of July timeframe. And then July 9th and 23rd seem to work well. Again, those are Thursdays. That's what we've been doing the last couple of years. What seems to work well with logistics with food trucks and bands. So really following a similar cadence to last year based on the feedback that we received. And each year that's just rolling a little bit more smoothly than the year prior. We would have rain dates the day after on the Friday. So each of those dates I just said, the rain date would be the day after. Um, I first want to get any feedback from any of you in case you see issues with this, but before we finalize this, I will want to run it past the land rec program. If you remember last year, we had to jump over to a rain date and then it conflicted with a land rec night program. And so that will be a final check before we finalize anything. And before I move on to any of the other topics within this overarching topic, anyone have any concern with those dates or see any conflicts or issues? Seeing some shaking heads.
Yeah, none that really jump out at me. I mean, the big consideration is, I think historically, school is probably still in session and through that second week in June, which is fine, which is actually might be great, right, for that initial attendance.
Yep.
Yeah, nothing jumps out at me.
I mean, the
Okay.
only thing that's that is I'm concerned about next summer is like, from like a event standpoint would be like World Cup dates. If people would
Oh,
be, if there's a big like USA match or something scheduled.
I don't know the World Cup. Is that schedule announced? Like, are they set?
They're largely set, yeah, at this
Okay.
point for group stage matches. I mean, it's a minor concern at this point, but it
It
may be
doesn't hurt.
worth
I mean,
worth checking.
yeah,
If
I'll
there's
check
like
it.
a big like USA game, that night that would, might take people away.
Okay.
I don't know.
Doesn't hurt to check.
That's that because I don't know. I was looking at the June and July schedule for that just recently, and I don't know. Minor thing.
Okay. Thanks.
My only
Cynthia, you were
comment
going to say
was,
something?
yeah, I
Yeah,
was just
yeah,
going to
Dan, yeah.
say, checking the Shorewood Elementary schedule just to make sure it's not overlapping with some event they have planned.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good. So we'll go with those as preliminary. I'll check into those couple things. And obviously, as I mentioned, check with Land Rec on theirs as well. As far as entertainment, I've started contacting a couple of bands. I just like last year, I do this in a couple phases because sometimes there's certain bands only have certain dates. So I've reached out to the initial couple. So waiting to hear back from one. One unfortunately can't make it, but getting that ball rolling nice and early so that they can fill up their schedule. Sound person is confirmed for this year, so that's great. As we've learned, he's a critical part of this program, or a qualified sound person is a critical part of making this go smoothly. So we got that in place. As far as funding goes, I did reach out to the Village League to see if they'd be interested in funding all or a portion of this again this year. It's on their agenda. They're meeting sometime in mid-January, so I hope to hear back by the end of the month on that. And then the other two topics are just marketing and food trucks. And Dietmar, I'll leave food trucks to you, and I know that probably coincides with your term topic. But on marketing, I threw this out there in the fall that we do need someone with Peter's absence to take that over. And Cynthia, I think you said you had some interest in doing that. I just wanted to check, and especially since we don't have the whole group here, is that something that's of interest to you that we could talk more about offline, or would you like me to try to find someone else?
Well, I'm really happy to do the marketing prep again,
Great.
which I've done the last couple of years. I'm pretty comfortable with that. Uh, in terms of the food carts, I guess I'd have to know more about what's involved in doing that before I commit to that. And then I also want to give a heads up that my term also comes to an end in April. So, I mean, obviously I can still volunteer and do stuff, but like, just so you know, I don't know when those determinations of committees are going to happen too.
Got it. Okay. And really, when I was asking, I was just referring to the marketing stuff. We'll get to the food trucks in a moment, but if you're willing to help out,
Yeah,
I guess what I
absolutely.
would
Either way,
ask.
I can do marketing no matter what. So,
Cool.
yeah.
Thank you. That's great. And I think I know you've been helping out in the last couple of years, like with the flyers and things. Peter was doing some other things, such as reaching out to the PTO and talking with the village about getting the Nixle alerts. And so at some point before the summer, we can go through those things just to make sure you're abreast of what he's been doing. Obviously, you can add your own flavor to it as well. Great.
Sure, that'd be great. Hopefully he has a list of where he's put the signs in the past, because
Yeah.
it's just nice to put them in the same places. People know where to look for them.
Yep. Great. Okay. Thanks for the help. Um, Food trucks is the last sort of subtopic I had here. Dietmar, I'll let you take this, but again, I think this probably flows into your topic of the end of your term.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it just means passing on the baton and
Yeah.
finding someone that can take this on. I think there are a lot of institutional knowledge to share, and certainly, um, anyone taking this on can add their own flair and their own preferences to shape this in any which way they want to, or how the committee wants to. I think there are several takeaways that we've learned over the years, and in some ways, it's trying to figure out what's best, and by that I mean loyalty over different either loyalty to the food carts that have been there over the years and that have consistently showed up, or trying to switch things up and bring new people in. And again, neither one is good or bad, but that's certainly one thing to keep in mind. I think as we all learned from our very first year, that there is a bit of a nomadic type mentality that if you, or if we as a committee, and certainly as part of a recreation sub program here, can't commit to certain food cart vendors, then that loyalty also evaporates, and then all of a sudden we're left with trying to find vendors at the last minute because they can't show up, so on and so forth. So those are all things that we're all familiar with, that we've talked about before. And I think knowing that there's plenty of time, I typically did not queue up the food carts until sometime in, at the middle end of April, which includes filling out the permits, contacting people, getting them on board, so on and so forth. So I think there's time, and there's certainly more conversations that can happen around that.
Okay. Well, let's on that. I'd say, and Cynthia, I know you said you were referencing that it might be something you'd want to help with. Maybe let's line this up for the meeting. I think our next meeting would be in March, where we hopefully have a bigger group here. Dietmar, maybe we could just take a couple minutes and talk through in a little more detail of what you do to line up the food trucks, so people know, eyes wide open, what they would be getting into.
Sure.
And see if there's someone that wants to raise their hand, Cynthia, obviously including you as well, to help out with that component. Does that sound good?
I think that's a very fair approach. Yeah.
Great. So that's the end of my update. Just really getting started with the planning, but trying to get an early start on it so we catch bands while they're available. Any questions before we move on?
I don't know that it's so much a question on my part, but I hope that as the legacy continues, that this program will continue on, and certainly not just through next year, 2026, but years following. So at some point in time, I think the committee also has to wrestle with the fact how to create the legacy and maybe give birth to it outside of this committee as well. And that might be just the next generational move. Or it lives inside this committee for the foreseeable future. I don't know what the answer to that is, but I think I see this as such an amenity, and why certainly I believe what makes the village so special is that communal component. So I would be very sad if it ever went away. So I would try very hard to keep this thing going.
Yeah, great point. I obviously agree. And I think talking about how to keep it going into the future, even thinking ahead of term limits and all that, I think is a smart move. So I'll give that some thought, and I think we should lay that out as a topic for the future.
Yeah. All right. Well, any other questions on summer events then from Cynthia or Ty? All right. Joel, is it okay to move on?
It is. Thanks.
Good deal. Let me give you all a bit of an update on McKenna Park, and if everyone recalls, this ties back to the McKenna Park Master Plan component that we went through in the last couple of years, and before that also the CORP, the Comprehensive Outdoor Recreation Plan component, because all of that really, one of the motivations to put these parts and pieces together is to apply for grant funding. Now, grant funding, there was an opportunity last year, I think middle of summer or so, that the village and village staff, Brian Mooney and village staff pursued. And there was a grant opportunity that was made available. But that grant opportunity was actually relatively small. It was to the tune of $25,000 or so. And don't quote me on that one, please, but that was the opportunity. But that in and of itself would have been great. I think it was for trail improvement or something along those lines. But it came with strings, and not necessarily so much of how to get the money to implement the work, but in order to implement the work, it came with an extra string on a federal requirement. So meaning that there's more paperwork, or that it had to comport with more regulatory applications, that all of a sudden that 25 grand really there wouldn't be much left to do actual physical work in the park. So after some consultation, I think internal conversations that happened between village staff, administration, and the consultants there, that the decision was made to actually just let that one go, because there wasn't a whole bunch of money left at all to really do anything meaningful with what the opportunity is. And then more importantly, set our sights on future grant and funding opportunities. So, a bit of a hey, we're glad that we have the CORP, we're glad that we have the McKenna Master Plan, because it actually did provide an opportunity to provide look for grant funding. It's just that the funding source really wasn't meaningful enough to implement, implement, and then see any meaningful outcome on this. So hopefully things will look different in the future. Any questions on that? Okay, I'll move on then. Legacy programs. Cynthia, I think this is your topic of the day, and I don't know if there's anything of consequence to share out, but I'll yield the floor to you.
Thank you. Yeah, I actually don't have anything really interesting to report. Good to just kind of keep an eye on things are going and make sure that leadership of those organizations and activities know that we're here to back them up and answer questions. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, good. I think maybe my only 2 cents on that one, we define these legacy programs at such broad terms here whenever I put it on the agenda, but it's really a dozen, not quite a dozen, a number of programs that are on there, all with different input um, and different care here. But I think we recognize the fact that we're the Recreation Committee, that there's some component of being here and available. Cynthia, as you had said, but some of these programs are just self-propelled, right? They're self-propelled as they go on from parent generation to parent generation, or as the administration, Village Hall takes over some of these aspects of hiring, on summer help, so on and so forth. So legacy programs, self-propelled is my takeaway. And Cynthia, you are go-to person on that if there's any interaction that needs to be had. Sound fair? Good.
Yes.
All right. Wonderful. Tennis courts. So I think at last we will actually have resurfaced tennis courts here. I'm just going to say sometime this summer. And talking with Brian Mooney, it appears that the Village of Sherwood Hills is the first project that the vendor will tackle when the season starts. And the seasons will start. I think asphalt plants have to stay open, or certainly warmer weather needs to be here, so on and so forth. But they were not able to get to resurfacing the tennis courts last fall. They simply ran out of time and temperature. They will, the subcontractor that was awarded the lowest responsible bid will seek all the tennis courts resurfaced as being their first project. At least anyone in the community that you see and that's asking about here, please share with them that information. And if nothing else, Nicole, you'll capture this in the minute. If anyone reads that, that's the status update. Questions on that?
Dietmar, I don't think you can leave our group until that one's done. How do you feel about that? Until it's actually done?
Oh, it will get done. It will get done. That's it's in the CIP budget, and the monies are allotted, and the monies they've been committed, and they need to be. This project just needs to get done. So
yeah, I'm just joking. I believe you.
Yeah, good deal. All right. Perfect segue here. CIP. Ty, I'm going to start giving you the floor in just a short second here, but I'm going to lay the groundwork. And as we had talked about, certainly at our last meeting, and I believe as I alluded to in the meeting before that, I really want this committee to tackle and wrestle with looking further out into the future and how to keep and maintain and improve this amenity of the Haydn House and that skating area. As I explained last time around, there are really two budgets that everyone needs to understand that by and large part the village operates with and under. There is the annual operating budget, and then there is it's a 5-year look ahead of the capital improvement plan. But where the first year or the upcoming year is the commitment of capital dollars for capital improvement and capital projects. So it's a 5-year look ahead plan, with year one of that plan having commitment of dollars and funds to be assigned to capital improvements. So in that CIP plan, in that CIP budget, things like road improvement, facilities improvement, things that take longer term to pay, for it to have issued debt and then pay down that debt over a course of time. So those are the two distinct budgets, and depending on really what wants to come out of this committee, and my goal is actually for this committee, and Ty has done a lot of work, which he'll get into, is for the committee to put together a letter or memorandum and make a recommendation to the board of different reach goals, both that could use some operating budget funds on an annual basis or different capital improvement funds to sustain and look ahead and have a greater longevity of ice use and ice time of this Haydn House amenity into the future. So I see the charge. I'm asking the body, this recreational body, to take on the charge to really idea and how to put forward a recommendation to the board for consideration. Now, Ty is a little bit more in tune and in step with some of those details. So without more blabbering on my end, I think I'll just yield the floor to you, Ty, and maybe let you get into the nitty-gritty detail of what we've talked about, what you've discovered, and where you see this thing going.
Yeah, thanks, Dietmar, for that intro about kind of the purpose of this exercise. Really, I think, on a kind of more detailed level, what we were setting out to accomplish is to, get input on all the possible improvements, identifying those, all those improvement opportunities, and certainly Dietmar and I can provide input, but we also wanted to get input from the crew, who are, frankly, doing all of the day-to-day work and what issues they see. And then from there, trying to then get a sense of like the magnitude of those items, in terms of dollars and time. And then, potentially assign them to, like kind of a bucket of, whether this is more of a annual operating budget, level versus a, capital improvement project level, or maybe it's an ask outside of kind of the village kind of budget structure to like a volunteer, or like a, philanthropic organization like the League, and trying to make some decision about what, how we kind of categorize these items and pitch them. So, with that, I'll just kind of maybe quickly walk through the items that we discussed. And feel free to stop me with any questions or if you have further input on these. First item is a liner frame for the free skate area. Right now we can line the hockey area because the boards serve as a liner or as a frame to tack the liner to. But there's no such way to do that on the free skate area. And this, the liners really enable us to kind of, better temper the, temperature swings and whatnot, and maintain ice over the course of the season. So this is like a, Terry estimated about $900 worth of lumber. So this is kind of a smaller amount, but certainly a lot of time to do this. We talked about regrading the field. One of the biggest challenges for maintaining the free skate area is there's a little bit of slope to that area, but there's some high spots which are hard to kind of bring the level of ice up to cover. And we've talked about regrading the field. That tends to be super problematic in terms of timing it when you consider that field is used for, school recess. It's used as a soccer field, by the Regent Club in both the fall and spring. And then in the summer, of course, it's for Shorewood Summer Nights and, land rec and just, general summer fun. And so it's really hard to fit any sort of regrading exercise into that constant use of that field. And I think there's been attempts to do it in the past, but it's, there's always some regression. So I think the plan, I think of like a full kind of regrading, seeding the field is probably a 10K endeavor. But I think the plan would be to tackle more of like maybe some kind of shorter term spot fixes where the crew can go in and kind of basically knock down some of the high spots that are problematic without doing kind of a full blown proper survey and regrade. And so that's really, what I'd like to kind of distinguish those two items in our plan, that there's a shorter term and a longer term picture, and we'll want to fit that regrading in to, maybe if it becomes necessary for any other reason, to keep that in mind. New hockey boards have come up. The crew spends a lot of time repairing kind of rotten boards, in the existing wooden structure every year, and they take about 3 weeks to fully dry out from, my understanding. You know, there's they're pretty labor intensive in terms of moving them around and kind of getting them set up. In talking to the crew, they would certainly be in favor to moving to like a kind of like a synthetic like board solution, which would be more, kind of easier to maintain and last longer. Cost of ownership would be less. It would also be an opportunity for us to rethink the height of the boards and the dimensions of that hockey area. Um, we get varying reports about some people don't like the really short hockey boards because people easily trip over them, pucks fly out all the time. The crew likes them because they're lighter. It's a little easier to maintain, but if you look at some of, what I consider best in class rinks in the Madison area, like Elver Park and Westmoreland, they have kind of the 4 foot high boards. And my understanding was that Shorewood's boards actually used to be that height, and they were cut down previously. Cynthia, maybe you were around during that era, but anyway, that's another item. This would be like, something in the 40K range would be our estimate. So this would certainly be, kind of a CIP item. There's some smaller, items like some additional kind of rubber mats to make the area kind of in front of the hiding house a little bit more friendly to younger skaters that are constantly walking around all over all the pavers. We talked about resurfacing equipment so that resurfacing the ice could be better put in the hands of a volunteer crew rather than rely on the village crew to do all the resurfacing work. And I found out the crew actually built one several years ago, like something that like you can fill up with hot water attached to like a bobcat and kind of like drag around the ice to kind of resurface it. I think the thinking is yes, it's a great it does the job. I think the question is it's really an item if you like that's useful if you want really like like manicured ice. Like if you're looking for like top-notch ice, and I don't think we're there yet. I think like to be honest, we're happy just like when the skating rink is open and the ice is decent. I don't know that we're looking for like, NHL quality ice a lot of times. And so maybe in the future, if we really raise the bar as far as the quality of our rink and it gets a lot of usage, that might be something to consider. But we're not there yet. And when we are, we actually do have equipment for it, which I was not aware of previously. And then the final item is, again, in the spirit of kind of trying to, perhaps distribute some of the work amongst like a volunteer crew rather than take time away from the village crew, is having the ability to or having access to a higher flow hose. there's been several efforts in the past several years to get like a volunteer crew out to, lay down some water at night when it's cold, and there simply isn't like enough flow in the existing plumbing around the Hayden house, um, to put out enough water and prevent it from freezing. Frankly, on a cold night. And so the service to that kind of plumbing around the Hayden house actually was upgraded as part of the Hayden house renovation. So we actually have access to a higher flow service line. It's just that diameter of that pipe is getting reduced, at some point. So, I think Terry estimated that, we're looking at maybe something like 3K to replumb that to get, maybe a more serviceable, um, setup around the Hayden house, and actually enable, like volunteers to go out and spray down the rink at night. So those were the items I had identified. Terry's current budget this year is for ice rink improvements is $2,300, and that was an increase from the previous year. He had asked for a little more, and that was granted. The liners, like a liner runs about $500, per rink, and he actually bought two of them this year, thinking that we might be able to get the frame done in time. But about half that, so basically means that half the current budget, roughly is going to liners. And he has some additional funds for some of these other projects. But anything beyond that, we're looking at tapping into you know other funding sources. So anyway, that's what we discussed in detail.
Yeah, thank you, Ty. That was just a great explanation of sort of the options and opportunities. Before I add any commentary, yeah, Cynthia, please, I'm sure folks have questions, and why don't you go ahead, Cynthia, and ask those?
Sure. I just had a small bit of feedback talking about the regrading of that area. And Ty, I really just wanted to agree with you that that's going to be an ongoing thing because it is a really highly used field and it's used all year round, which does make it harder too to find a time when you can do work on it and let it regrow and that sort of thing. It is something that we have resurfaced before, right, and regraded. And so I think it's just something we're going to have to do every so often. I was wondering, in part of that funding for if we do regrade it, if we could have a plan for maintenance in between that could helpfully maintain it a little bit better in between the regradings. So exactly like what you're already thinking of is sort of taking off the high spots, right? But I wonder if there's something we could do as maintenance that would be relatively inexpensive, but help us maintain it better in between those higher maintenance level regradings.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, just in talking to Terry, I think it's not too complicated. There's just some kind of like, spot fixes. I mean, there's other challenges with that field. Like the grass grows really poorly on that field, or at least, doesn't, it's kind of a field of weeds right now. And Janet McLean typically coaches one of her girls' soccer teams on that field. Um, I'm sure they would appreciate having nicer grass. Um, so, I think it's a kind of a large, and I'm sure the school would appreciate, um, you know, a more lush, lawn in that area as well. So I think it's a larger issue about, how to best kind of improve that space, which is really kind of one of the crown jewels of Shorewood.
Just as a side question, have you talked about suggestions for how to deal with the grass with Janet?
I haven't.
Okay.
Maybe, yeah, I mean, I certainly can. Um,
I just wanted to throw out there that she would be a great resource to get an idea of what she's seen work and what she hasn't seen work. And she was on the recreation committee for a long time as well. So
okay. Okay. Yeah, that's good feedback. I talk to her somewhat regularly, so um, yeah, that sounds good.
All right. Thank you, Cynthia. Joel, do you have any questions for Ty?
I don't, nothing specific. I don't know a lot about ice rinks. I'm not a skater, and my family aren't. It seems like this is a solid, well thought through list that has been evaluated, and so I trust that it's going to be put in the right spot.
Okay. Well, given that feedback, Ty, go ahead and you wanted to
And
say
sorry,
something.
I was just I forgot one more item before we kind of maybe go back big picture. Um, I also brought up the idea of aesthetic improvements, right? Like a lot of what I talked about are more like functional improvements about, you know, the quality of the ice, the longevity of the ice, the like skating experience or the hockey experience, whatever. But there's certainly something to be said about kind of like creating the winter wonderland that everyone, wants Shorewood to be. And so, I think there's also kind of room for, if we feel like there's any aesthetic um items or, which may be, partially functional as well, as like, if there's like lighting, if we feel like the big kind of like stadium style lights are sufficient, or we'd like to have like some lighting that's closer in, anything on along those lines. I think it's really, I was encouraging Dietmar and Terry to just, do an internet search of like, really um dedicated like, Canadian rink owners who like, make these rinks in their barns or whatever, and, put up or have like, Pinterest pages or whatever. Like it's pretty impressive like what a lot of them do. So and those sorts of items, I'd be really open to any public input of, what people think. So, anyway,
Great.
Dietmar,
Ty,
back to you.
yes, Pinterest on Canadian hockey rinks is what you encouraged me to look up, but I have
Mhm.
not done so yet. But maybe it's time. Anyway, back to big picture. So I think my sense is that really there aren't any objections from those people present here today with what Ty had presented. I think the next step really wants to be um, for this information to land in some written document, and again, really for this body to consider and make a recommendation to the board. So, Ty, I'm going to volunteer you for this one to maybe have a letter or a memo, whatever format you feel is most important, um, to come to the next meeting for review and just kind of and certainly items that are on there. I don't think the intent are to micromanage the recommendations, but to lay it out very succinctly. Here are recommendations the Recreation Committee discussed on both keeping and improving the Hayden House ice rink amenities. And here are the opportunities for board's consideration. So then in terms of process, the way that I would see this would hit the March agenda, so that this body can talk about it. And depending on how the conversation goes, maybe to actually get to a recommendation and then have that flow to the board level. I think the most important part for this committee as the committee moves on beyond my legacy is to continue to keep an eye on this recommendation so that it doesn't orphaned and sort of wither away in some drawer but that this continues to be brought up and brought to the forefront, because as I explained to maybe some of you independently, this could be a longer process to get through, and the appetite may or may not be there depending on who sits at the board. But I think, and my recommendation really would be to let's get this across the finish line here in March. It's, Ty, if I again can volunteer you to put something in writing for this board to review, and then make a recommendation on up to the board, and then start keeping track of those things over the course of time. How does that
Absolutely.
sound?
Yep, that all sounds good.
Ty, I'll
Joel,
just jump in. If you
go
need a
ahead.
hand with that in any way, feel free to reach out. I'd be happy to help. It's not an area of expertise of mine, but if you just want someone to bounce ideas off of or proofread the document or anything, please reach out.
Yeah, I'd appreciate that. I feel like I have all the content ready. I think I could use help in how to present that in a way that the board or the committee is used to seeing that sort of material, and what sort of presentation um, is appropriate. So, and Dietmar, I may lean on you for that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't overthink it. Letter format as recommended, endorsed by
Yeah.
this body to float up to the board. This is
Sure.
it. Good. All right. Well, I think those are some good concrete steps there. Ty, thank you again for spending the time and effort on this as well. All right. Before we move on, any last questions on this topic? All right, seeing none, I'll move on. Line item 6G. Nicole, I'll make sure to get everybody out of here in about 25 minutes. Thank you. Line item 6G here, pool building modernization and recommendations. Now, the pool is not in this committee, right? It's not the purview of the Recreation Committee, but it's related to other, I guess it's just a related topic. And I think it's really my position to let you guys know, unless you very closely follow all the ins and outs of village committees and what's been talked about to date. It's my prerogative to inform you that the pool committee has undertaken with a consultant a recommendation in the pool facilities modernization study. There are recommendations that came out of that study, and they're really tackling with what wants to happen with the pool, whether there is a great inclination to simply fix a few odds and ends to make it create a few more amenities, or to have a more complete overhaul of the building. And when I say the building, that's really I'm categorically combining two functions. There's the building that houses the pool operations on first floor, and then there's the building that houses a community element vis-a-vis the community room on second floor. So when I refer to the pool building, I mean the entirety of the building. So those conversations are happening. This all ties back to probably where does the pool committee land on this with the recommendations, where are funding sources coming from, what's the cost of this overall project, how does this look like in the long run? So I don't think there are any immediate things that will happen, but just be assured that the entirety of what wants to happen with the pool building and first floor operations, second floor community space is in the purview of the pool committee, as well as the board, because that's the community component. The community room is a component of conversations that are happening at the board. So FYI, you're informed. All right? Good deal. Moving on, new items. We don't have any new items to talk about, so we'll skip through that. No further conversation. Housekeeping items. Member recruitment. I think we're getting to this time of year that I think it would be good for anyone in your social circles, people that you think has an interest, and try to recruit members. We have one vacant seat That is Peter Wickman. So we're a one person short on our committee, and sometimes people are really interested in committee appointments, and other times they're hard to find people and have them sit at the table. But it takes all of us to spread the word and to make sure that people remain interested and want to volunteer. Now, the application, I want to be very clear. There's an application process to follow, and if you go on the Village of Sherwood Hills website, and this really applies to all committees, people that are interested in committee appointments across the board. If you go either to committees, you'll see the list of committees, and at the bottom of it, there's an application form that needs to be completed, and with instructions how to complete it and where to send it to. And so please follow those processes for anyone that's interested in serving on a committee, make that recommendation. That application is then taken in, and the application should be recorded and dated. And at this point in time, the way that committee appointments are made, sort of in the general term of the annual elections, is right now, it is still the president's prerogative to make recommendations to the board for committee appointments. Sometimes that's done in consultation with the chairperson. Sometimes that's just done at the will of the president. Sometimes it's done in consultation with other members of the public, but it's still the president's prerogative to appoint committee members that way. You should also know that there are conversations happening at the board level if in fact that process wants to be revamped, and if in fact that the privilege, I guess it's not the privilege, by ordinance, the duty that the president has to appoint people, make recommendation for board approval, may want to look different. But those conversations are happening now. That process may take time to develop. It may not. It may actually be implemented in shorter order than what I can project. I don't know. But that is current state, and you all should be aware of that. I may have rambled a little bit, so I apologize. If anything is unclear, please ask me in terms of just member recruitment and application process, and how the application process works, and then how people actually get appointed to a committee. Questions on that? Joel.
Just one, Dietmar, do you know, I'm not sure if you're informed of this, but do you know, has anyone applied to the vacancy that we've had for 6 months or so?
There is a list of individuals that are interested in all sorts of committee appointments. And on that list, I believe, are individuals that might be interested in serving on the Recreation Committee. I think what we're struggling with right now, what the board is struggling with, is where the duty of the presidency lies in the process that I just described, by which people get appointed to committees. So at the last board meeting, at the last regular board meeting, when this topic formally came up, the general consensus was until, let me say it this way, there should be somewhat of a built-in pause right now until the board can really decide which process to follow, whether to continue on with the president making recommendations for board approval, or whether a different process wants to take shape on how to get people appointed to committees. Now, this will all come to a head with the election cycle coming up. So traditionally, after the April election, even with a sitting president or a new president, but certainly new trustees being voted in, the whole committee process, or I guess appointment, gets reshuffled a little bit, right? People leave, new chairpersons get assigned, members' terms are up, or maybe they want to be reappointed again, so on and so forth. So we are 3 months away from that process, wanting to at least be informed of what the most prudent way forward is. And that's the conversation to have for the board to have.
Got it. Thank you.
Any other questions? No? All right, then very much aligned with what I just talked about, but current members. So I had Nicole include a copy of what's available on the website as well, and that's current members of this committee. You'll see them there, it's on the last page. And then I see that Santhia and Kat Hurley, your term officially ends in 2026. And Santhia and I talked before the meeting because I guess it wouldn't be fair for me to assume that everybody really knows when does a term actually end in 2026, but it runs in line with the cycle of the election. So once the new board is sat, then the term limit of the committee technically, don't quote me actually on this one, I think expires by the end of the month of April, and really new committee appointments want to be made sort of in the beginning part of May. So what I would recommend, Santhia and Kat Hurley, you're not here today, but in case you happen to watch this at a future point in time, you should really look internally and see if you want to continue on and be reappointed as a committee member here, and if so, that you also follow the process that I described earlier, which is to complete your application, send that in, and even if you want to include a little letter or some anecdote as to why you believe you want to continue on, and certainly should continue on with the work that you've done to date. So, Santhia, I think you and I are pretty clear on that one, unless you've got any other questions. Should be pretty straightforward, right?
Yep, and I was able to find the form online, so thank you.
Great, wonderful. All right, so that's member recruitment, application process, current members, term limits, renewal application, and then just as being a good steward of our democracy, spread the word. The election is on April 7th this year. So there's your opportunity to vote for new trustees and shape the future of Sherwood Hills the way you believe it should be. So that's my one thing, Nicole, that you'll grab in the minutes, that we have election on April 7th. All right?
Okay.
Excellent. So this brings us to future agenda items. What remains to be on here is any meaningful follow through from the Corp. And this topic has been hanging around for quite some time. And I don't know where this will head, and if there is enough inertia really by this committee to take this on more seriously in the context of the recommendations that were in the Corp, have further conversation if those are needed, or if it just sort of sits there and remains in stasis. I know that there are many topics at the board level right now, all of which appear to be extremely important. No one at the board level has raised any or has made any inference that the Corp needs to be revisited, or recommendations that were in the Corp, other than certainly grant funding and funding opportunities for McKenna Park need to be pursued. So I hope that someone will grab this at some point in time in the future and maybe scrub it and socialize it again for conversation, see where this wants to head. But until such time, this will remain on future agenda items. All right. Now, I also mentioned, I've previously mentioned, if now is an opportunity for Nicole to record if there's a future agenda item that we want to talk about. That's one opportunity, is to voice that item now. But what I've also mentioned before is that I have to get my agenda over to Nicole Thursday by noon the week prior. So if there's an agenda item that comes up that you as a representative or a committee member want to raise at the next meeting, by all means, give me a call, send me an email. You know what my deadline is, as I mentioned before. Just let's have the conversation really Thursday before 10, so that at least I get a couple hours. If there wants to be an agenda item that we want to talk about, then I've got a couple hours to get that onto my draft agenda and over to Nicole. So that's that process. Make sense? Good deal.
Could I go ahead and add one for the next time?
Please.
Just a document for the next one. So Dietmar, the one that you referenced earlier, I think it'd be a good conversation, especially if that might be your last meeting, is just getting ideas on how to make a program such as the Shorewood Summer Nights sustainable and ongoing, and methods in which people have seen that happen in the past. I'd love to learn about that. I haven't seen that happen before, so I'd like to get a conversation going about how that's been done successfully on other programs.
Okay. Now, typically at the board level, we don't have big conversations about this, but I'm going to be so free and actually do real quick. So if you are the one championing the agenda topic, typically it'd be formed to provide supporting documents and information for conversation. But it could also just be, hey, Dietmar, I want to have this be an agenda item for this body to talk about. And I'll do a little bit of research, or I'll come with some opinions, but I'm really more interested in hearing the opinions of other people. So I think you just decide how you want to approach this. And if it's, and I suggest, hey, put together some information, send it to me, and then with adding this agenda item, then we'll include that information into the meeting packet.
Great. As of right now, I'd really just like to hear ideas from people. If I think of any information to include, I'll definitely send that along to be included.
Yep. Okay. Ideas and conversations only. Okay.
Yep. Can I pop in quick, Dietmar?
Please.
Joel, I'd be happy to talk to you outside the meeting some other time too. And that might
Great.
be helpful with some information of where you're trying to go, at least to bring that with you to the next meeting.
Great. Thanks.
Okay. Nicole, do you have I've made a note of this, and I know that I think we'll have it on the March agenda. And I'm not sure what the proper terminology is here, but I just wrote down how to make a program a legacy program, something along those lines. I'll come up with a better catchphrase here, but I see the motivation. Okay, good. Any other future agenda items?
I guess once I prepare the letter, for the committee to review and provide a recommendation, I think that'll just kind of serve as a a reminder to put it on the agenda. So
yeah, I'll keep the equivalent of item 6F on the March agenda.
okay.
All right. Well, folks, we're actually coming up on time, so that's good. There are no other topics on the agenda. We could sit here and look at each other. Or I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Does anyone want to make that motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All right.
I'll second.
Cynthia, thank you. I saw your hand up. So Nicole, motion adjourned by Joel Fields. The time is 8:11. Second by Cynthia Brand. Unless I see anyone raising their hand, I assume unanimous consent. Seeing none, we are adjourned. Have a wonderful Monday night. We'll see you later. Nicole, the time is 8:12. The meeting is adjourned.
Thanks,
Thanks
everyone.
very much, everybody. Good
All right.
night.
See you
Thanks, everyone.
guys.
Take care.